All right, so we're gonna roll right along. Also, Edwin, thank you for the shout out on the merch. I'm merched out right now. This is for my podcast, The Morning Spotlight. Shameless plug, if Alina's okay with that. All right, so we're gonna get to our next speaker here in a little bit. It is Gero Keil, the potential of no-code AI automation in business operations. Did I say your name right, Gero?
Almost. Gero Keil.
Gero.
Keil is the last name.
Well, welcome. Yeah, awesome.
Thanks.
So we're excited to hear from you, talking about the potential of no-code AI automation in business operations. Do you have can you give us a teaser before we actually get rolling here of what your talk is going to be all about?
Sure. So I'm the CEO of Levity, and what Levity is all about is helping companies automate processes that previously could have not been automated because they require some sort of cognitive abilities. And so what I'm talking about today is, what do I actually mean when I say using no-code AI in business operations, and what makes the category that we're creating here at Levity so much different from the existing automation companies like Zapier or Integromat or UiPath. So look forward to this.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. And just like we did with Nikhil, if people have questions for Gero as he's going through his talk, just drop them in the chat. And when he's all done, we'll ask him. So Gero, looking forward to this. Good luck. And I'll see you in a little bit.
Cool. Sounds great. Thanks. All right. Cool. Hey, everyone. Great to be here today. As I said, I'm going to tell you a bit about the potential of no-code AI in business operations. So I prepared a little presentation. I hope it's online now and you can see it. Otherwise, feel free. I see the chat. Otherwise, feel free to post in the chat. We can see it. So let's go. All right. So let's think about data. What kind of data do you know? There are, from the way we look at the world, there are two different types of data out there. On the one side, there's structured data. That is information that is organized in rows and columns, data that you would typically have in Airtable or in Google Sheets or in a database like MongoDB. And then there's a second category that is basically around unstructured data. So that means PDFs, documents, JPEGs, or images, text data, audio files, video files. And that means that this data is typically nothing that you can just write a rule for. So think about, an Excel file where you can write a formula and you can say, hey, if this value is over 10, then, do this or that. And the reason why this is important is, if we think about business processes, this is a process that you could, for example, very easily build with Zapier. You have a trigger event, for example, something like, hey, you get an email with an email attachment. So in the next case, you might have structured data in there, for example, the date of this email or something else, and you can just define a rule, if the date is if the date is within this range, then do this or that. But if you deal with unstructured data, you can't write any rules anymore. So for example, again, think about that use case. You get an email with an attachment, and what you can do with the attachment, of course, is you can, for example, put it into a Google Drive folder or into a Dropbox folder. But you can't apply any rules on that attachment in a sense if it's an invoice, please put it there. Please put it in the invoice folder. If it's a document for a contract, please forward it to my lawyer. If it's a CV, please put it into the applicant tracking system. So this is something that you can't do because you can't just write a rule like, hey, this is a CV. Because, okay, maybe it might be in the name of the file itself, but that's also not really something that's reliable, right? So how do we bridge this gap from unstructured data to, being able to write rules? Ultimately, we need to know what kind of unstructured data we're dealing with. That can be text, that can be a document, image. We need to know what's on there, or what kind of document it is, or what kind of data it is before we deal with it. So artificial intelligence can bridge that gap, because AI systems today are able to learn about images, text, documents, audio data, video data, and they're able to learn ultimately what you want it to learn. So if you want to train your own AI to identify incoming email attachments, in order to identify, hey, whether they are contracts, NDAs, CVs, payment reminders, receipts, or anything else, then you can train that AI and you can put it in the process. And ultimately, after the AI identified it, you can basically, trigger different processes. Okay, you can say, because now it's structured, right? Now you know, okay, those are invoices, those are payment reminders, those are contracts, those are NDAs. Now you can say, hey, if it's an NDA, do this. If it's a payment reminder, do this. If it's an invoice, do that. And so this kind of gap that exists between unstructured data and the ability to define rules and act on those, this can be bridged by AI, as you can see here. So looking at the current kind of automation landscape, we see it's like roughly like this. There's this big part that you can see currently of tooling like your iPad or Zapier that is like an iceberg. But below that, is a much bigger part, like with icebergs, that we define as cognitive automation. So basically business processes that contain unstructured data that currently can only be handled by human, which lead to issues like high labor costs, slow response times when it's about answering customer support requests or emails or any other business process in which it depends on the human responding to any unstructured data coming in. And ultimately, this can also lead to lost revenue potential. So if we think about what we can do as humans and what machines or an AI can do, I see it in the following way. So we humans, we have eyes. We're able to look at the world around us, and we're able to, for example, recognize things, or we're able to localize objects in our view, like a cup of coffee here. And we're able to count things. And so these, kind of tasks in a way can be replicated by AI through technologies like image classification or object detection. And there are many more, like image segmentation, etc. We can, read through documents, recognize documents, or copy paste info from documents. The corresponding AI technologies would be, document classification or key value pair extraction. And we're also able to read text, understand the meaning of text, extract keywords or numbers or info. And those would be things like text classification or named entity recognition. So in that sense, and that's only like a tiny part of the entire list of tasks that, AIs today already, can do. So in that sense, those are the kind of process that we focus on, although right now we purely focus on classification issues. So thinking about Levity, what we basically provide companies with is a platform that allows them to train their own AI systems without writing any code, and the ability to integrate them into business workflows. And why is this such a big thing? Currently the AI technology that is out there is mostly just being used by engineers, and mostly just engineers who know how to use ML, which is a tiny sub-fragment of the fragment, which is, people who know how to code. And so what we do is, as you can see on the left here, AI blocks, this is the part, and I'm going to show you that in a second. This is the part where you can train your own AI from scratch without code in a few minutes. And then the part that is called flows is where you can integrate it into your business process. Like, as you can see here, getting attachments from Gmail, putting the invoices into Dropbox, putting the receipts in a Google spreadsheet, and forwarding the resumes to a Slack folder. And so we enable companies to build powerful machine learning algorithms with one line of code and integrate it with hundreds of workflow integrations. What kind of use cases are relevant for that, or do we see out there? A wide variety. For example, when it comes to text data, tagging customer support tickets, is something urgent to answer or not? Is it positive or not? What is the topic? Analyzing email content, like what is this email about? Or if you're getting replies to outbound marketing or sales campaigns, what are people telling you? Are they telling you to leave them alone, or are they interested, or do they say, okay, it might be interesting later? With AI, you can just analyze your email your incoming emails. Evaluating survey responses. So are answers to surveys valid or not, or what kind of topics are people mentioning? If you ask them, hey, what could you do better? Something like this. Filing and routing documents, you're getting maybe a ton of email documents or attachments on a daily basis, figuring out what you're getting and automatically triggering the right processes. Checking and categorizing customer onboarding docs. So if you operate an online platform and you're collecting lots of documents or documentation from your customers, like driver's licenses, passports, contract documents, etc., then you could in real time check what are people uploading to your page, so that you could basically give them feedback in real time. Hey, you forgot to upload your driver's license. We can't onboard you. Please get it before they leave the platform again. Predicting ad performance, basically by looking at the visuals and the text of the ad, and figuring out, will this ad perform well based on our historic data. Tracking company sentiment on social media. So are people talking bad things about our brand on Twitter or on Facebook? Analyzing customer feedback, which is kind of similar to the survey response case. Categorizing leads by company descriptions, like if you're a salesperson or if you're an investor and you're looking at databases of companies where you always have a company description, the tags in these databases are often messy or do not match what you're looking for. You could, for example, define just you could get some descriptions. You could say, hey, these descriptions are interesting to me, these descriptions are not interesting to me. Based on that, you train an AI, and that AI can basically look through a huge list of companies and can say, hey, these 200 companies or these 500 companies will be interesting to you, and these 10,000 won't be. Visualizing, inspecting product quality would be one of the last, like figuring out defects in products, like, hey, there's a dent in that produced part, or hey, this part doesn't match our quality standards, things like this. So this is how like a fully automated process on Levity would look like. You've seen that in a smaller scale a few minutes ago. But here, for example, and I'm going to show you that in a second in the tool, if we have enough time and if you're interested in it. Here in that, case, you can, for example, see we have a trigger app that would be Gmail. We're getting the Gmail attachments when an email with an attachment comes in. We're figuring out with an AI that you trained on the platform, is it an invoice or a receipt or a resume? If it's an invoice, it would be uploaded to a Dropbox folder, and there would be a record being created in a Google spreadsheet. If it's a receipt, it would be forwarded to a Slack channel. And if it would be a resume, for example, we could have an AI look at it to check whether it's signed or not, or whether it's, let's say, an engineering CV or a business CV or a product CV, or whatever kind of categorization you would like to do here. So with that being said, I would love to give you a quick tour of Levity. I think we have the time, but also feel free to ask questions in the chat, and so we can, just go over there. So in our platform, basically, as I told you in the presentation, we organize it in a way so that there's one, the part AI blocks, and then two, there's the part flows. So typically you would build an AI block first, and you could then integrate it into a flow. So AI blocks, we have, this is my account now, so I already have a lot of stuff in there. But we also have some templates. For example, 3 templates that are in here are, typical PDF document categories like CVs, invoices, and receipts that you could identify. Sentiment, like in texts and tweets, identifying whether something is positive or negative, or real estate, like recognizing the room type based on images. Like imagine you're operating Airbnb or so, and you might want to know, hey, on a given picture, what is being shown? So let's look at some of these cases. One case would, for example, be text classification. And, this could be applied in, Edwin, I see your question. Exactly. This could be used in customer service ticket classification, where you might want to tag incoming conversations. Or let's imagine you're Amazon, and you might want to identify whether a book review that you're getting is negative or positive. So something fairly simple. So what we have here are like, is an AI block. We called it book reviews. We created 2 categories that we want to train the AI on, which is negative and positive. We uploaded 1,000 negative reviews, and we uploaded 1,000 positive reviews. Reviews like reviews like all over the place, confusing, poorly organized, I was unable to read this book and would love to return it, bad, very bad. So that would be a negative one. Or a positive one, like, hey, this is wonderful, it is for fans of Laura Ingalls Wilder, and so on. And once we've uploaded enough data for each category to train on, and the bare minimum is 20 data points per category, so we have way more than that here already. But then you can basically head to the training part. And in this case, I already trained the AI, so we don't need to do it right now. But this really just takes 5 minutes. We can train it here with one click, no programming skills needed. And then the AI is basically trained and ready to go. And we can head to the next step. And I hope, it looks like it's quite small on your screen. Let me make it a bit bigger. So here, for example, you could test the AI. So I could say something like, hey, this book was really bad. So that should be identified as a negative one. Cool, so that's negative. If I switch it out to good, it should be positive. So what's special here about this? Or if you recap to the presentation, why does it matter right now to train an AI? If you apply a rule-based system to text, then you would do that by doing so on applying this to keywords, right? So you would say, hey, if the word good is in there, then it's probably a good review, But now what happens if I say this book was not good? Well, that would be negative, right? So you would have to write an exception that basically says, okay, good is only good if there's not a not in front of this. And so ultimately, I believe you can think this to the end, like you'll end up writing hundreds or thousands of, exceptions just in order to cover one single case, like, identifying whether it's positive or negative. And so in this sense, this AI here is able also to, deal with spelling mistakes. So for example, if I write something like, hey, this book was awesome, it still identifies, hey, it's positive. in a keyword-based approach, we would have to write another exception, right? Like if it's the word, but there's one letter missing, still accepted. And it is also able to handle more complex things like the beginning of this book sucked, but overall I really loved it. It has a negative element to it, and maybe in a rule-based way it would be 50-50, but in this case it understands the context. So enough testing for now. Let's take a look at the next step. So the next step, what we would do basically is we would decide if we're happy with the performance. Let's put it into a process. Do we want to let the AI just act on its own, or do we want to make sure that a human basically checks when the AI is not sure? And so we can say, hey, look, let's just let the AI handle this, but we can also say, hey, let's verify it if the AI is not sure. So in this sense, we would basically define a maximum error threshold that we allow the AI to make. That could be 5%, for example. In this case, a human would have to look at 3.4% roughly of data that's incoming. Now, if we decrease that from 5% to, for example, 1%, we can see, that right now the human has to look at much, much more stuff because, of course, the AI is not allowed to make as many mistakes. So it needs to be much, much more sure. And then ultimately you can just integrate it into your business process. And, this can be done either by integrating through Zapier or Integromat. We integrate with these two platforms because they have tons and tons and tons of, integrations, way more than we do. At some point, we hopefully will also have as many. But for the moment, we want to give our customers the ability to integrate with as much, tooling as possible. And you can also integrate this into Bubble if you want to build a web app that is AI powered. Before we head to flows, let me quickly show you image classification and document classification as well. So, image classification, that, for example, would be, an AI block that can identify, whether there's a, corgi, a dachshund, or a chihuahua on the picture. Oh, these images seem to be old. Let me try to find the other one. Or let's just take the real estate example. That works just as well. I just like dogs. So, in this case, for example, we uploaded like 500 bedroom pictures. We uploaded 300 living room pictures. We uploaded 150 dining room pictures, 127 kitchen pictures, and 316 bathroom pictures. And by doing that, basically, we could train the AI. In this case, you can see it's not perfect, but it works well. And the next step, we could test it. So we could basically, just try to get a bedroom picture from Google. Let me see whether I actually, have something here. I think I should have something on my clipboard. Or not. Living room. So here, for example, we can just look for a living room picture. Let's just take this one here. Copy image link. I hope it's, this one. Oh, no, this is one of these weird Google photos. So I'll just save it locally. And now if we head back here and we want to test it, I can just take that image, drop it here. The AI now looks at it and identifies, hey, this is a living room. And so, gathering that data typically doesn't take that long. And I mean, maybe, to answer Simon Higgins' question here already, is no-code AI really worth the effort? Well, I mean, ultimately you got to decide, but within, 5 to 10 minutes, you can build something that typically a machine learning engineer would have to spend hours, if not days or weeks on. And what's now especially special is you can also integrate it into your business process in less than 5 or 10 minutes. Try and tell machine learning engineer, hey, now please connect the model to my Gmail or to my Dropbox. It's not that trivial. So yeah, definitely, no-code AI is really worth the effort. And before we go to Flow's last thing, here, for example, same as with the images or with the text, just with documents. So here, for example, we're categorizing documents into like receipt, resume, or invoice. So we could connect this to our Gmail inbox, for example, and whenever a new document comes in, it could automatically be categorized. And I think I showed you this flow here already in the presentation, but this is basically how you could integrate it. So we have a visual workflow editor, and you can just pick, any trigger. You can connect it to an AI. For example, the invoice, resume, receipt example, and then you can define what happens after the AI identifies something as an invoice or a resume or a receipt. And so you can trigger pretty much any business process that you could imagine. Cool. So from my point of view, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you today. I'm happy to answer, any of your questions. So if you want to jump to the Q&A, I'm happy to do that now.
Awesome. All right. So I know you answered some of these questions, and if you did, I'm just going to go back through the chat. If you answered this one or any of them, just let me know and we'll move on to the next one. So
sure.
The first question we got in the chat was, what tools do you use to grow your business and automate tasks with no code, or what can you advise?
Way too many. I think looking back, I would have actually tried to make an effort to use less tools and just, focus more on centralization, because ultimately, the more data you have in the same place, the less headaches you have. Which tools are, really essential? So, for example, we are also, we're an automation company. We're also relying heavily on Zapier because it's just awesome for very simple tool-to-tool connections. So, processes that, using Levity for would be an overkill. So in that sense, we, build a lot on Zapier. We use Intercom heavily. We also use a pretty new platform quite intensively, which I can really vouch for. It's called Calixa.io. It's basically a product-led growth CRM that allows you to connect all your backend data with all your customer data so that you can really see what your customers are doing inside of your product. And it's really special because we, as a product-led growth company, we often felt like the CRMs out there are not really built for us. Think about Pipedrive or HubSpot or Salesforce, they're often rather for companies who have like a strong outbound sales motion. For us, that's not really the case. It's rather, that we focus on, as per definition, product-led growth. And so in that sense, Calixa is a super interesting young company that I would definitely advise you taking a look at. Yeah, I think that's it regarding, very important tooling. Of course, we're using way more. But that would probably be an overkill right now.
Understood. So the next question, I know you answered a couple from Edwin, but I'm going to just let me know. Is it possible to embed Levity in our software? We deliver customer service software for e-commerce companies. We'd love to superpower our users to manipulate and automate incoming messages in different channels.
Easy answer, yes.
Awesome.
So every AI block that you have seen is accessible via a REST API. So you don't have to integrate it on our Flows platform. You don't have to integrate with Zapier or Integromat, but you can just integrate it via REST API with any of the software that you're using. And in that sense, if you have, a tool for other companies where a lot of customer support tickets come in, you could just build an AI block on our platform and integrate the REST API with your software so that every message that comes in gets to Levity first, receives the info back, and you can use that however you want.
Awesome. Hang on 1 second. I lost the chat here. Here we go. We're back. Okay, so he also asked which languages. I think that was when you were answering one of his questions. Did you get to which languages?
I think I didn't answer it yet. So our platform is language agnostic. We have a language recognition built in. So basically, if you just upload purely English language, then we will have an English machine learning pipeline. If you upload mixed languages, we will pick a language agnostic pipeline, so that if you mix French with Italian, with German, with English, then we will just pick a language agnostic one, which might lead to you having to provide more training data so that the AI doesn't get confused. But you can also use that pretty much for any language. So there's no language we haven't seen working yet. Even thinking about Cyrillic letters or Greek letters, all of that still works.
Right. Okay. Ice Flame 2A asked, do you have a free plan or trial?
Yeah, right now we don't have a free plan. We will definitely have one in the future, but we're in closed beta right now. And right now, basically, we only work with paying customers. That basically means that whenever you come to Levity, you have to tell us a bit about your use case. If your use case qualifies for the platform, meaning it will be working, then we can basically onboard you into the lowest paying plan, which starts at $100 a month. And then we can basically work together on making this work for you. At some point when we launch in a more open way, there will definitely be a free plan. So sign up today.
Yes, sign up today. And then Archibald West asked, now I'm not sure if this is connected to the your talk or something else that we put in the chat before. You use Appiway before? I'm not sure.
No, we are not using Appiway at Levity. As I said, we're mostly building very simple internal automations that involve many tools on Zapier. And also a lot of stuff on Levity ourselves. So
Gotcha.
Just the simple stuff is on Zapier.
Right. And then Raul had a couple questions. He wrote, is tool and your process, can it easily identify the right picture? Sometime canvas frame issue, sometime pixel not okay. One more point is set data parameters not match like section for string. You're also reading this too, right?
Yeah. Okay, let me check. Okay, I think I understand roughly what is meant by him. So okay. I think, and Rahul, please correct me if I'm kind of wrong here, but from what I read from you, I understood that what you would like to do is you would like to, look at pictures, which could be screenshots or maybe something else, where some pictures are in some way broken. Like there are, for example, pixels in, let's say there are pixels in red on it. And as a human, you can easily see when you look at the photo, hey, look, there's a red pixel on this photo that shouldn't that doesn't belong there, and you could easily sort those out. But of course, again, you can't write a rule. You can't just say, hey, if there's a red pixel on this, then please sort it out. If in that case, all of your sundown photos would maybe get sorted out. In that sense, yeah, definitely. You could just upload all of your defect photos into one category that somehow have like optical differences, and then you could all upload some that are okay in a different category, and you could train your own AI on identifying visual defects in photos, basically. So yeah, that's definitely possible. Can getting PDF data to be structured data? So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm understanding correctly, but as I've shown, we have AI blocks for documents, so you can just define different categories. You can upload PDF documents into each categories, and then the AI will learn how these different PDF categories look like, and you can use that in your process.
Awesome. All right, and then I know he had we got a lot of people liking what you did today, so that's really good. I will also put in here, last I faced an open frame studio of Facebook where I get frame and data. I don't know if that's a question or not, but if you can see that one.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think it's again from Rahul, right? So I guess it refers to this broken image part. So if you I guess it sounds like these photos are in Facebook. If you can get them out of Facebook in a structured way, you can just push them to Levity, and we can recognize which of these are broken or not. And then regarding what Edwin said, sentiment analysis, for example, in Dutch, yeah, that's definitely possible. If you have some, positive messages in Dutch, some negative messages in Dutch, you could just train your own sentiment analysis model in Dutch on the platform in a couple of minutes.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions. Gero, thank you so much. That was great. And thank you, everybody, for the questions, asking all those questions. I appreciate it, Gero. Thank you for coming on with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.